everybody, Lawrence Man here, and today I want to walk you through this. This is my latest book cover. As you can see here, it's already well underway. This is just the latest kind of sketch iteration of it though, and this is already being client approved, which is absolutely great. Now my client's seen me doing bits and tweaks on this so far, and it's just the front cover. There's no text on it at all yet. Really what we're going for is the look and the feel. We've had several conversations and chats about it, but really we're just talking about layout and world building and getting some of the details and the kind of textures and the overall color scheme. We've thrown a few reference images back and forth, and you know, not getting the finite details in there, but you know, just getting the overall look and feel right. And you know, really it's for me to go away now and work on all those details. But there's some things in here that I know I want to get rid of that I haven't talked through with the client, and he's told me to, he's mentioned things that he doesn't like about this image, so I can go away and get rid of those. There's also things that compositionally I know don't work here. There's ideas I have for things I want to change anyway, such as well, you'll see. But yeah, that's basically it. So why don't we go ahead and get cracking. This is actually about an hour long video. I've got a bit of a confession, which is this has already been done. I'm just doing the voiceover afterwards. So basically, I've sped this up to what was 3,500%. This is actually days upon days worth of work. And rather than you sitting there and watching me do this over my shoulder for days and days and days, which you wouldn't want doing, and I wouldn't want you stood there over my shoulder for days and days and days, that'd be strange. Rather than that, I've sped this up significantly, so you can watch me draw for a lengthy amount of time very, very quickly. Now, when I say very quickly, it's still just over an hour, but you'll see this progress from being a sketch to being the final image, which is actually this image here, which, as you can see, is a big difference. You can see that full detail there, and you can see exactly how that's changed. You can see the text there, and you can see which pieces have straight away changed. Now, this I'll put them side by side here, and you can see exactly what's changed here. There's an amazing amount that's changed straight away. So let me just bring those up side by side. There we go. So yeah, you can see the difference between the sketch and the final cover. So you can see automatically that some things have moved around. I've added in other things to change the layout and the composition. We've added in the text now. So some things have had to move around to accommodate the text automatically. There are some things that the client asked for. There are some things that I wanted to change myself automatically, but there are some things that just needed to be tweaked anyway, and a lot of it is finite detail work. Now the detail automatically takes a lot of time. I've worked on this image in Adobe Photoshop. I do a lot of my work in Photoshop, and I do a lot of my work in Corel Painter. The reason I've worked on this image in Photoshop is because this is a more technical piece. Somebody asked a great question the other day, which is, do I work mainly in Photoshop or in Painter? And I gave an explanation for an argument for both of these, and I'm going to leave that for now because I've asked them to ask the question again in a video form so that I could come back and give them an answer in video form as well. And if you want to ask a particular question, please feel free to do so within a video, and then I can come back and I can give you a video answer. That's always great. You know, you can leave a comment, a question below here in the comments, and I'll get back to you. But if you want to do it in a video form and get a more fleshed out, fuller answer, that gives me a chance to put up another video on YouTube, obviously, but it gives everybody else a chance to listen to the answer as well, which is great for everybody. And if you don't mind putting up your face on YouTube, you don't have to. If you have a friend who's particularly not, you know, anti-camera shy, you can always ask them to ask the question for you. Or you can draw, you know, you could screen capture a drawing while you're asking the question, you know, or just have, you know, film a lovely scenic day while you ask the question. It doesn't have to be your face on the camera while you ask the question. I just realised how that sounds, but yeah, just keep it clean. But yeah, you can see those two side by side there, and you can see the difference. So this is where we start off, and this is where we end up. And this is going to take us an hour, believe it or not. So yeah, let's get started. Okay. So here we go. First thing I'm going to do is take us right back to the black and white. And in the layer palette, it's easy because I only created the colours all as one layer for that initial sketch. So all I've done is knock that off. And the first thing I'm going to do is start on the car, which is actually my favourite piece of this image so far, was the car. So the first thing I'm going to do is just go in here and just start neatening up those lines. And it's actually really, really simple, because as much as I loved the car, the lines on it weren't crisp. So the first thing to do is just go in, use the angular lasso tool, and just start neatening that up, making it even more technical. And again, that goes back to why I'm using Photoshop rather than Painter. Purely for me, I like to use Photoshop when I'm doing more technical things, and that's what my answer between the two boils down to. Photoshop I use for more technical pieces. Now, you can see how massively scaled this piece is if you look in the top right hand corner at the navigator. If you're looking at this on your mobile phone, it might seem a little difficult to look at the finite detail that I'm working on. You'll be able to see the main window, but if you're looking at this on your monitor or even on your TV screen, you'll be able to really appreciate the finer points of the detail. In the top right hand corner there's the navigator, and you'll be able to see the little red box, and you'll be able to see just how zoomed in on the image I am at points throughout this video. I really do get zoomed in really, really closely. Now, even though this is a book cover, and a book cover is relatively small, you know, you're talking 9 inches high at best. So you might be wondering, why am I zooming in this closely? Well, yes, a book cover is only 9 inches, but on the other hand, a lot of authors like to go to book events, and they like to have their book covers printed as banners, which go up to 9 feet. Imagine this book cover printed off 9 feet tall. So imagine this car would be 1.5 feet, 2 feet across. Well, not even that. Okay, maybe 1 foot across. So it needs to look fairly detailed. And that could be kind of cool. On the other hand, maybe I have some kind of OCD that just makes me want to zoom in and do lots of detail. Which, yeah, okay. I'm an artist, I just want to do lots of detail. I'm going to have to skip ahead here because I had a video problem, so let's not hold that back. And again, just correcting more detail here. There are some points where my perspective is off because I was only doing the rough sketch so I could get it to client fast. So at all the points I'm remembering that my sketch, you can see how rough it is there at the top, and I was using a square brush. Now Painter these days Painter 2016 has the ability to bring in Photoshop brushes that it didn't previously have with the 2015 iteration. So now you can have any brush you want in Painter. So I can have my square brushes in Painter. But I was using a square brush to do most of this layout during the sketch. But I don't want to do that with Photoshop now on the final painting. Reason being, I don't want that concept art look. I know a lot of people go, oh yeah, it looks really cool. And I think it does on game concept art, and that's kind of really the only place that concept art kind of stippled square brush look looks cool. You know, I think some artists make it look really great. I just think for me it doesn't look great on a finished piece. I want to be able to zoom in and get something that looks relatively photorealistic. I don't like something that looks truly photorealistic. I think that looks a bit too, part of me thinks, well, why not just take a real photo? I know you couldn't with this, but then you could do photo manipulation. So I'm somewhere in between the two for my own style. There are elements of this, say for instance, there's an angle here that still looks really, really wrong to me, but I know I can change things later on. So the main aspect, and I think a lot of people, I see a lot of people go too far one way and too far the other way. I think the main thing to do is just keep working. Don't try and change every bit. Don't try and get everything perfect. Just keep working. Just keep pushing through, and then go back and tweak things later. If you try and get everything perfect straight away, you'll be stuck in one tiny area of a painting forever. If you feel bogged down in one area, move away and come back to it. Those lines there, I know the angle of the building in that area isn't perfect, but I know I can grab it, distort it, tweak it, and come back to it. I didn't want to mess around changing all those lines then and there, so I know I can walk away from it and come back and tweak it later. Sometimes it's better to do that because I know I'll be able to look at it with fresh eyes in 5 minutes time, an hour's time. And by doing that, I'll be able to it will be a lot better than if I mess around for the building now and spend half an hour agonizing over it and making it possibly even worse. Over the course of this entire video, I changed the building shape a lot because I keep agonizing over it. And it's something that you can do quite a lot, especially with architectural shapes. Even if you've measured them out all perfectly in the beginning. And the reason for that is that even if your perspective is straight in the beginning, your eye doesn't necessarily like a perfect perspective. Not when you're creating art. I know mine certainly doesn't. There's something in a lot of artists that wants to warp the perspective slightly. I never like my perspective to be perfect. I was trained in perspective when I was actually still in primary school or junior school. I don't know how schools change in America and Germany and England, so I don't know all the names. When I was at the age of 9, I was taught second and third point perspective. So I know what I'm doing, but I still want to distort it and change it. So the perspective here is already radically off, but that's what I'm going for. I want the main building here to start closer to me and slope off, as if it's not exactly straight. Part of that is because I want the perspective to be warped, and then another part of that is because I don't want the building itself to be straight, because these buildings are supposed to be, in a way, slightly organic, and in another way, not to have been architecturally designed. They are supposed to have been built almost section by section, rather than being built in one go. They're supposed to have been built by nanomachines over time, piece by piece. So, if you remember the initial part of the video, where you saw the final cover, you'll see that the building looks a lot more organic. One thing here is when I started drawing these shapes is because I wanted the building to look a lot more 3D. So I started doing this by drawing these blocks here. I just wanted more shape to the building, and I wasn't sure at first how to achieve it, so I just started drawing on more blocks. Looking back, I don't think blocks was the way to go, but I wasn't sure what else to do, so I just started drawing blocks. It was strange because blocks seemed so wrong. I wanted something organic, but I was drawing squares. This is something I wanted to do because, to me, these little pieces here, this seemed so Chris Voss, who was a 70s illustrator who I really admired as a child. And these kind of great ports here, I could imagine cars flying out of these, and this to me was kind of awesome. I could imagine cars flying out of those, and it just, if you look at the work of Chris Voss, that was just something he had on a lot of his illustrations, so I really wanted to replicate that. This flying car here was something, it's one of the first things that I drew on this illustration, and I really, really loved the flying car. I loved the early sketch of it because it looked so rough, but I had to neaten it up quite a lot. Just extending this section out here. Now you see, I'm doing this all by freehand. I'm using the lasso tool. I could use the shape tool and get some really quick, crisp lines. But even though I'm using the lasso tool, I'm still going around my edges with the paintbrush, because the last thing I want to do is keep the crisp line of the lasso tool. And the reason for that being, I don't want the horrible crisp line that the lasso tool leaves. It can leave a really computerized feel. amongst the really nicely undefined line that the paintbrush leaves. I never leave my hardness set to 100% on my brush. Now this is sped up, of course, so you won't see, when you do see my brush right click appear like there, obviously it only appears for a second, so you can't see my brush size or my brush hardness, but it's never set to 100%. It might go down to 0, but it never goes up to 100. At most it goes up to 90. I don't want the brush to appear too hard. If you do zoom in very closely to my image, you will notice that none of my lines are too hard. And there's no reason for it. You want everything just to be a tiny bit soft. Otherwise, when you start painting lines on top of lines, they just don't blend. And the same goes for opacity, really. I would say don't set it to 100. But then again, you should be using a Wacom tablet or a drawing tablet of some variety. I don't want to pin you to just using Wacoms, even though I love Wacoms. You use whatever tablet you want. But yeah, your pen pressure should take care of that. So I do set my opacity to 100 and let the tablet take over from there. So I've actually decided now to move on to a different building and leave the primary building alone. Even though it's nowhere near finished, this might help me come up with some more ideas for the primary building, and just because I've been drawing it long enough now. You know, I'm kind of tempted to put the real speed thing just so you could see how long something takes. You know, but no one's ever going to watch it. I think the warp tools in Photoshop are quite significant as well. And I think when drawing something like this, you have to experiment quite a lot. If I was drawing normal buildings, if somebody asked me to draw a New York cityscape, then it wouldn't be as important. But drawing something more futuristic, drawing a futuristic cityscape especially, the exploration that comes from having these kind of warp tools is very, very handy. Now I've got my brush set to, yay, the only colour on sale, and my name sneaks in whenever I do little bits of writing like that, because I don't know what else to write, and there's nothing wrong with sneaking your name in various places. Especially helps when people try and steal your art. It's true. Now you can see I am starting to dot in more and more layers. And there we go. Doing some weird window shapes. And I didn't spend much time on those buildings there. I just quickly created those and moved back across to here. But they've really helped. And also they were in my field of vision, as it were. But they have helped me come up with ideas for creating the main building. But now the building on my left is in my field of vision as well. I've got this idea now from drawing those of creating all these little veins everywhere. Not veins, these kind of sinewy muscles everywhere. Now this is one of the things that the client asked for, that I make the top portion of this building a little thinner. So that's just what I'm doing, is tidying up the top portion. And I do that even more up top as well. Just add a little kind of building at the top. There we go. Just keep adding detail wherever I can, basically. I keep looking at empty sections and keep just generally thinking, what could I add there? How could I make that bit more interesting? And until I come up with a good idea, I leave that bit blank. And sometimes I see an area and think, oh, I want to add some detail there, but that bit's got detail already. And I keep thinking of good bits to go on top of good bits. And I keep looking at blank bits and thinking, I can't think of anything I want to add there. So I just leave it and come back and, you know. Or I'll look at the buildings in the background and think, oh, I want to do that bit, but I'm not allowed to touch that bit yet. You know, I've said to myself, no doing the buildings in the background until you've done the building on the left, and no doing on the building on the left until you've sorted the main building out. You know, little things like that. But no, I'm doing the building on the left now, so it's okay. Again, this sinewy muscle, I want to add more of that in. But I'm going to break out and do the car now. What I've decided to do is just cut the car out altogether and put the car on its own layer. I've quickly coloured the car layer blue with a layer effect though. And the reason I did that was just so I could see the actual layer itself, so I could erase the white around the layer. The jittering effect there you could see was me undoing and redoing the warp, so I could decide if I liked the warp I'd created or not. The liquefy, sorry, not the warp. And I liked it, so I kept it. Whenever I do an effect like a liquefy, once it's complete, I go undo, redo, undo, redo, undo, redo, and just see if I like it or not. Sometimes, most of the time I do, but sometimes I look at it and go, I prefer how it was before. See there, I just did it again quickly. And here I'm just going to start adding on windows. There we go. Now looks quite cool. Maybe these... I thought at first these were going to be windows, but I now know they're actually little carports instead. Because the building's so thick, you wouldn't actually just have all windows on the outside, because what about the people who live deeper in? You know, they'd need more access. And they wouldn't just use lifts. Everyone's got flying cars. So they'd have carports. So this is their entranceways. You know. I know this is a book for an author, and he's written it, and this is his story. But I'm allowed my little bit. So yeah. And that's what a good illustrator does. A good illustrator adds to the world in that way. You know, I have to have a little rationale for every little piece that I create. And I wouldn't add anything here without this. Say for instance the top of this building here. The left hand side of this building has all these lines on it. And it kind of looks like gears would run down the side of this building. And that's kind of how I imagined it would work. As if cogs and gears, as if something could come up the side of that building. And I thought that would be quite cool. As if the buildings were actually meant for something else. But we don't know what. It is an organic building. Well, not organic in that sense, but it was built organically by small machines. But did they have... We don't know if they had something else in mind. It was built for humans by nanobots. So I don't know. I'm just saying, I like the idea of the nanobots creating the buildings, but maybe there was something else in their purpose that we don't know about. It's an interesting theory. One I just threw in there, the author never noticed it. Hey, I just like to tease. So I'm adding in now just more detail, and I'm just flicking back and forth to see if I like what's been added myself. This is all the original sketch that I'm just painting over. Again, going back and adding over these old pieces. And it's a shame because some of the pieces that I have to draw over I actually really like, but they're kind of inaccurate, but still really work for me. It's like there's some texture detail here that I like, but it's inaccurate, so there's nothing I can do about it. Tonally, there's a lot of stuff that I can pick up on. Some of my tone work here is kind of done, so I really like this. There's a leaf brush I used here. Can't even remember where I got it from. It's just in one of my brush packs. So, really happy that that was there. I very rarely use custom brushes. I try to stay away from them as much as possible. The grid shaped one you can see is one that I created for a Photoshop tutorial I did a while ago. But the leaf one, I can't even remember where I picked that up. One thing I do have to do is kind of standardize all these branches. Again, going back to the idea of the nanobots creating the building, so I wanted these all to be like branches on a tree. So I'm going to distort the bottoms of these so they're all different, but I want all the main trunks, as it were, to be kind of standardized. And they were originally on the sketch, but then something changed and they all ended up looking a bit higgledy-piggledy, so I have to go back in now and unify them again, which isn't a problem at all, but yeah, it just something that needs doing again. And there we go. Nice and easy. Now I can just flatten that layer. I'm trying to keep my layers down. But you can see the difference of the detail between what I'm drawing now and what I'd drawn before for the sketch. Doesn't look like too much, but it actually is when you zoomed in this close. But I can go in, clean all that up, just add some more detail on top. I mean, the great thing is, I'm not starting again from scratch. I'm just adding more pods over there. The client really loved the pods as well, which was great. And that was just something I came up with kind of top of my head. See, the brushes, this is the trouble I have with custom brushes. The presets on them are never right. So I'm having to go in here and fiddle with the brush and try and make it work. Try to find, there we go. But the brush works. Going back to the car now. Way. I tried to leave it alone as long as I could. But yep, actually, like the other car that I had, and I'd pulled that out and stuck that on another layer. So that's what I'm doing this time with this one, is actually putting it on a whole different layer and changing the perspective to be a little more technically correct. There we go. It's a shame because the car in the sketch is right here in the foreground, and I loved that. And I put, quite a bit working on it. But then in the final piece, I shrunk it right down and actually put a person here. That was not at the request of the client. That was on me. I did that. And I felt that the cover itself needed a person there, because the book is called A Family Wall. and I felt that it was actually a bit soulless to have the city there with a car and not a person. But I loved the car. And at the same time, I didn't want to put a person there overlapping the car. Still not vanity. Still not vanity. I didn't want to put a person there overlapping the car because they would have looked like they were about to walk into the car. So it's not the fact that I didn't want to cover my artwork up. It's the fact that they would have looked like they were about to overlap the car. So, as I said, I'm just making the making the building look a bit more like trees, in a sense. Making them look like they're growing. Making the idea of the nanobots building. This is the brush texture that I was on about. So I'm just creating something that feels a bit more created, constructed by nanobots. Could have drawn this by hand, but it's one of those occasions when a Photoshop brush does come in handy. I'm not really a big texture fan in this way, but as long as it's used responsibly, then it can work. It's okay. I think I've gotten away with it on this cover because the cover's so detailed. Textures can work, but like I say, they have to be used responsibly and with a good reason. You know, it's just one of those things. I think the next thing is more of these kind of muscle, tissue, sinew kind of areas. And if you notice when I create these, I always dot white lights on them, and that's what I'm trying to do here with that, is show off kind of information passing through them, and that's really what I want to do there with those. But they look pretty cool, and I just want to kind of define this building as well. If I was to start this all over again, I would probably go back and put everything on different layers. I'm pretty sure that I did that originally when I started the sketch anyway, but you kind of end up crushing down layers, you know, to make it easier, or because you have to do in order to get certain effects. But, you know, that's just what happens with any illustration over time. Now we're moving along to something that really did change this illustration for me. It was kind of the breaker, as I call it. And once I got this, the illustration really revved up for me. Again, more of these cables here. I started to do this mesh system here, you can see, and this looked fantastic here. And then I started to add these sky roads. Now the sky roads were something I'd been thinking of for a while, but I didn't know how to make them look special. So I started to add this mesh system as well. And I was like, wow, that's it. It looks totally different now. Oh my god, it looks good. And I can add those lines with the dots, you know, the muscle structure underneath. Oh my god, it looks so cool. I was really happy. And yeah, the building started to look totally different and less box-like and mechanical, and I was just like, wow. And at one point I was thinking, I'll have like little sky roads coming out of the building everywhere, and then I had to slap myself and say, no, you won't. But I was like, I'm going to add meshing everywhere all over this building. And I kind of did want to. But I experimented with the meshing, and the meshing looked good, and I was really happy with the meshing. Meshing is actually really hard. I think some people have the brain that works to create the meshing ultra simply. You see, I went over onto this building and went meshing. Sometimes I created the meshing like that, really simply. And sometimes it took a couple of goes. Sometimes I went a little too far with it and had to pull it back. But I think ultimately over the entire illustration it worked really, really well. I think it worked with the idea of kind of the nanobots creating everything. I think that's when it kind of really, really worked. For me, that's when it kind of, yeah, that's when it came together and looked pretty amazing for me. You know, and going into this piece here that you can see, you know, the meshing, this is kind of the closest detail of the meshing, and you can see how I'm adding in the shadows to the meshing as well. And you can see how it integrates into the building and pieces like that. You know, it just works really well and helps tie in everything. Yeah. And it's kind of like, and it integrates into the floor as well, and it just helps sync everything for me. It actually made this building look really feminine to me for some reason. I think it looked like ballet shoes. I think that's what it was to me. It made that building look like ballet shoes. But I really liked it, and it really worked. I think, yeah, it looked like ribbons. But I was so happy with it. It just really worked. So I had that then, and that was, I think every sci-fi world has a signature style, and I thought the ribbons were my signature to this piece, as it were. So where there was a piece that was lacking, I could go in, whoa, redo, undo, redo, undo. Where there was a piece that was lacking, I could then go in and say, meshing, and just add some, you know, cross lines and make it all look really cool. Right, so anyway. Meshing! See, it works. There's no denying. Yeah, you can see that little pattern there, that triangle pattern I'm painting there, also appears on some other pieces throughout the design. If you look around, that is reoccurring patterns in pieces like this are always good. You know, I would say you shouldn't have anything that doesn't appear more than once, but I do have pieces that don't appear more than once. You know, architecturally unique designs are okay, but you do want things that also reoccur. Meshing! Hey! You should play the meshing game. You know, just drink every time you see me drawing meshing. I don't draw it that much. You're okay, you're safe. I don't go crazy with it. Meshing! Meshing! It looks like Spider-Man's attacked. When Spider-Man goes crazy, meshing! Okay, I go crazy for a little bit, but you can't hold it against me. It really works. This is what London's going to look like in about 60 years, I guarantee it. They're going to see this, and Mayor of London's going to say, I want meshing. 'Cause that's what Boris Johnson does. I don't know if he's still mayor. Meshing! See, there I got it wrong and had to start that one again. But that's okay. See, what I do is I start off just drawing it all in one colour, then select it, and then draw the lighter bits over the top, and then bits of shadow. works really well there. I was actually really happy with that. And it doesn't just have to be the cross-hatching, you can draw other lines that come off of it, etc, etc. But it's time to crack on to things like windows. I wanted to draw a quick dome in there as well. Like an ice cream dome. I don't know why. That looks like a big cornetto and that's all I can see. That wasn't a visual joke I was going for there. I actually wanted that to be like the sci-fi equivalent of the observation tower, because the dome would function as an observatory. And that was another thing I was thinking about, that all major buildings would obviously have a scientific building. Anyway, you can see there how I'm doing the windows by just drawing straight lines. Ooh, more muscle structure. Yeah. Again, trying to get more flowing lines in. And yeah, I'm not going to say it. Don't worry, I'm not going to say it. Kind of looks like it, but it's not. I thought I'd go with something slightly different there. And yeah, that looks kind of nice. I like that. There's, ooh, tiny bit there. Yeah! That looks nice. Get it on all the buildings. See, I'm keeping it subtle. I spent a good while of time on this building actually, just getting it right here. I don't know why my brush went a bit mental here and started to draw odd little lines. I think it was the palm rejection. Just kept spotting lines and dots everywhere, but worked really well, and I ended up being really happy with this building in the end. Took a while just to refine the detail here, but yeah, I was really super happy. I'll come back to that building in a bit, but yeah, I wanted to make the top of this building a lot smaller. The basic reason for that is that I've got a large area for this book selected around the edges. A large area selected around the edge, which I consider my safe zone. And although I'd always considered that it'd be okay to cut off the top of the building for bleed, I thought, I'd still like to bring the top of the building in the safe zone. You know, I do like the top of this building, especially that long pier, you know, where the rich people would live. So I thought I'll make that top a bit smaller. Also, it makes it look like the buildings are even taller, as strange as that sounds. So I thought I'd bring that in. And look there. Look at what I'm trying there. How crazy does that look? This looks like aliens. Oh, excuse me. This looks like aliens are actually trying to overtake the building. So I give this a go, but ultimately I think it was a bit too much, wasn't it? So I'm bringing in some of the design here that we've got right down at the bottom. That works. So yeah. Cone. I think that is maybe a touch too thick, but it still works. So just going in now and maybe causing myself to go stir crazy by the sheer amount of windows we're having to add in. I mean, there are a lot of windows, and windows take a lot of time. Really, they take a lot of time. It's not just the fact that you have to draw in lines, because it's really hard to copy and paste windows because of the angles and the perspective. So you can't cheat, really. But you also have to delete, you have to go through and delete random windows. So yeah, it takes time. You've got to remember that you're watching the sped up version, so it looks relatively quick, but obviously sped up by 3,500%, everything looks quick. Yay! But what you're watching is days and days and days and days and days of work. You know, I pause the recording, nip off for something to eat, come back and unpause it and carry on drawing. There you can see my safe zone. So, potentially anything outside of that box may never be seen by anybody other than you. May not be printed, may not be used on the book cover. All of that detail that I've added in may never be used. Here I am just creating some people to wander through the street. So at first that's how I was going to add in my first person. And I thought, yeah, that's fine. You know, overlapping the car like that. Yeah, I lose, like, all the best detail is right there. But it looks like, well, he's the right size, but the car looks a bit small. But then again, the car is floating. Then again, it is the future, so how do we know the car's too small? Maybe cars are just bigger. Maybe it's technically not even a car. I could make it a bit smaller anyway. One thing I would like to point out is that you'll notice that all these people here are dark grey. There's no black in them, and there's no white in them either. I start it off by just drawing these all a fairly dark grey. Reason being is there's a lot of white in the picture behind them and a lot of black in the picture behind them. So I wanted to start off by keeping them all fairly greyish, so there was no confusion with the picture behind them. And then as I get into a little more detail on them, I add more lighter and darker tones. Just so I feel more comfortable with the detail I'm adding. I'm actually happy with how they started to come along. I think the guy here with the bulldog face is probably the worst looking at the moment. But yeah, I mean, they all started looking pretty good. You know, they were at the point where I was happy enough with them. And this is me just moving stuff around, trying out different pieces. Best thing to do is just to tweak some details and see what I can get. Don't know why I stopped there and decided to try his hair out. But yeah, I thought I'd try the car here. Maybe redraw this bit of background. Because I knew I'd have to move the car. So I thought I'd put the car there, redraw the background, and then use this time also to drop in the title. And I'd been thinking about the title anyway, so it meant that I had to lose that Sky Road though, which really annoyed me. But I kind of knew what I wanted to do. So I thought there was several places I could put the car. So that's what I did. I put the car there, neatened up the Sky Road and just turned it into a platform. It really upset me to do that. It really upset me just to have it as a kind of jump platform. But that's what I did. And then one thing I wanted to do was one thing that the client and I had talked about, which was to have more of an urban street feel. So I wanted to go in and add all these kind of neon street lights. It was great to have the mixture of the buildings with the natural feel to them, mixed in with how the humans had treated them over the years. So you've got buildings that had naturally constructed themselves with the nanobots, and then the humans have come along and put lighting up and signs up and so on and so forth. So I thought that was quite interesting and really nice. And obviously, you know, it gives me the opportunity to light the buildings differently. And it's something that wasn't on the sketch either. So yeah, there's a lot of possibilities in there. But I didn't want to move on any further before I'd at least gotten this sketched out, because it's all part of that composition that has to be completed now. Realistically, I probably should have done this before I'd even gotten this far, but yeah. Interesting side note is that the client hadn't given me any information on what to put on these signs. So it was all on me at this point. I did expect when the cover was signed off that the client would come back and say, can we change a couple of these signs? But the client never did. So, interesting. I made sure that I didn't use any of the signs to my personal gain. Didn't put anything silly on the signs. Sign is an excellent place to put your own signature, obviously. I did have my name on one of the signs, but that was about it. Other than that, I just had random stuff. So yeah, there's my name on one of the signs. I made sure to have some random Chinesey, Japanesey, Orientally, don't want to insult anyone, hope that didn't, kind of symbols on there. Just to make it feel a bit more Blade Runner-ish. So I did also write my name on there as well. But I go back and change that later on, because I felt it was maybe a bit too in your face to have Lawrence written on one of the billboards. So yeah, I felt meh. Just having Lawrence on a billboard, on one of those signs, I just thought, meh. Client won't want to see that. So I'm going back again and playing with these guys, and now, even though this is sci-fi and it's future and everything, I could have easily really gone to town sci-fiing those guys up, but I really decided not to. I really decided I didn't want to make them too futuristic looking. It was a lot better to keep them grounded in reality in terms of what they were wearing, but keep it dark, nondescript. I had mentioned this loosely to the author about what people were wearing, etc., etc. And there was no in-depth conversation about it, but we did talk about it, and yeah. Oh, the flooring here. The flooring, you'll see that I'm using the same idea as the kind of muscle structure on the walls. The idea that information and lights are passing through everywhere. Again, this is the idea of the nanobugs. What I want to do here is add some smoke and steam. The idea being the idea to the whole piece is really that the rich to well-to-do people live in the upper echelons and the working class down at the bottom. And that's also reflected in the colour scheme of the piece. You've got the gold at the top, the blues and the neons down at the bottom. So I wanted to add some smoke in at the bottom as well, you know, a kind of Blade Runner-ish feel. While I've done that, I'll also make sure to turn those layers off, because it's great to have them, but you can't work with them on as well. So really just experimenting for now. Right, so I'm finally getting a chance now to go into that background and play with it the way I want it to. There's an archway here. At the moment it's kind of difficult to pick out, but at the end of the road there's an archway. And then we've got a secondary archway and some buildings in the background. And then over here in the background there's some more buildings, and they're kind of large spires. There we go. Another skyway. Some bigger buildings over here. I don't know why, but I figure the bigger building in the background, that one, is some kind of religious building. Don't know why. I have no idea why I figure that's a religious building. Maybe Stuart can tell us what it is. I figure he should tell us what it is. But this was absolutely great fun, adding in all the cars, because I tried to make sure they were all different. This is the color layer from the sketch. And what I did was I just worked on top of the same color layer. And I didn't make a new color layer at all. I just worked on top of the same color layer and just changed it. Every time I added something, I made a tweak to the color layer. So going back to the black and white illustration, I just created another layer and added more cars. And really, it just came down to a few simple tones and using a small brush and making some tones. There you go, and then turning the color layer on and quickly just dabbing on some color where the cars were. I could have made these further apart if I wanted to make them look fast, but the truth is that I wanted to make this look more like traffic jams. This is all fairly straightforward because we've all seen this in 1,000 different movies. The movie I was most thinking of was actually The Fifth Element with Bruce Willis. Yeah, I don't know if you can see that. It's actually an X-Wing I've snuck in. And a TIE fighter behind it. Yeah, for obvious reasons, just being a geek. But, yeah, I've totally thrown myself off. Yeah, The Fifth Element. That had some absolutely great some great shots in there with the traffic jams and everything like that. And I love that to bits. I could have done straighter lines of traffic, but I love the idea of traffic actually curving around corners and bending lines of, I think you would have straight lines as well, but if it was in the sky, I don't think people would queue in nice straight lines. I think people would go wherever they wanted to go. I think lines would naturally form because as people we naturally queue, but they wouldn't necessarily be straight lines. So, yeah. Again, that led me back to this car. So you just draw whatever you want to draw, in whichever order you want to draw. So I changed my name down to this position, but then changed that name to the word tattoo. Tried to make it look a bit more neon-y. I actually spent a while writing the word tattoo out, which was strange. And I changed this to some kind of weird crocodile symbol. It doesn't mean anything, it's not a logo of anyone's. I just drew a weird snappy mouth and it looked a bit like a crocodile that amused me, so yeah. So I'm turning those clouds back on and seeing how they looked. They look pretty cool, but I just have to change them, and there we go. So I'm zooming in and looking at this guy's face and just having a play. There we go. Just trying to make him look a bit more human, a bit more generic, less like a thug. That guy's got a bag strap, but I want it to look a bit more refined. Just change his anatomy a bit. And I'm just going to tweak this guy with the liquefy tool. I think, yeah, I changed his hood here and actually moved it over to the right, and I actually tweaked his whole perspective and it looked a lot better for that. So I'm actually just going in here on the color image, on the color layer, and just going in and making little tweaks and improvements everywhere on the color image. Just coloring these cars and just trying to make every car an individual color. Yay! Hours of fun for everyone. You'll go mental trying to do things like that. Trying to find a decent color for the cars as well is actually really tough. I think originally in the sketch my car, this one, was yellow. And I was fine with that to begin with, but then I realised it just looked like a taxi cab. And I'm not 100% sure if I was happy with that. Whether it should look like a taxi cab. Was that a good thing or was it a bad thing? I have a couple of layers now in the colour range. And that can be a really good thing because you can change them so that one of them is on colour burn, so that your blacks pick up a colour. That way, if you change it so that only the top half of your image, like this, picks up the colour, then it looks a lot further away. But again, I've got to go in and sort out the colours for all the neon signs, which in itself can be a real task. It's one of those times where actually a custom brush does come in handy. The brush I'm using here is actually the Photoshop equivalent of a painter brush that I love. So I'm using this. I could take this image through into Painter and do a bit of work on it, but I have a couple of custom layers here that won't open up in Painter, and then if I bring it through from Painter into Photoshop, will become squiffy again. So yeah, easier just to use a different brush, and it looks good. Just to blast everything in light bright colours now, all my lights, and find a layer effect that matches. Sometimes I can play with my layer effects for about 20 minutes before finding something that actually makes me happy. And sometimes I'm never happy and then just end up redrawing things all by hand. I'm trying to create an overall layer tone in this bottom corner. Like I say, I'm trying to get the top half of the image to be, ooh, we're the rich people, and the bottom half of the image to be, we're the poor people. So it's important to make those differences stand out. Like I'm trying to make this guy here stand out. And that's actually quite easy. Just try and make all these people stand out for the moment. You can see the web banners. Web banners? You can see the banners here that I've quickly made. I was watching the Star Wars movie again. Should I say I was watching YouTube videos about the Star Wars film. And the bit in Maz Kanata's castle made me think about putting up all these banners. So another great piece of influence there. And that's really helped to, you know, cut up this building here. So I've put on a colour here, changed it to hard mix, which is nice, or even pin light. But then what I've done is, once I've got the correct tone, I've gone to my hue and just changed the slider until I've found the correct colour. And that works as well, really, really well. Okay, now this is the bit that made the image pop for me. Adding the gold. Now it's funny because at first the sketch you've seen has been the approved sketch, but the sketch before that was very, very similar, but had a gold tone over the entire image. Now Stuart said to me that the problem he had with that was that the buildings looked like they were made out of sandstone. I really liked the golden glow of it, so I was worried when I did this that he'd come back and say it's just got that gold look again. But I loved it so much, so I knew I'd have to work hard to make this look not golden again. So yeah, it's hard, but it works really, really well as far as I'm concerned. I'm trying to put a kind of streak of sunlight down here, as if it's cut through some of the buildings. But just getting the layer effect to work is just virtually impossible. I'm trying it in a few different ways, and yeah. So what I'm doing at the moment now, I've decided to go in and colour all the plants that are sticking through. Stuart really liked all the organic elements that I'd added in. And this to me was a lot of fun and really, really worked. You know, it made the buildings seem to have a real depth to them. You know, to really be integrated into the lives of the people. Now I'm fiddling around with the colour of the cars again. This one just needed to stand out a touch more for me. Ultimately I was happy with the yellow car, but I needed to stop the blacks in that car from being so black. If I'd have had a flat panel on the side, I think I would have written the word taxi on it. I could have created a flat panel on the back, but I didn't want to go doing that. This sections on the floor as well, I did try and make that more grassy so you could see through the gaps. So that way the building looks more as if it was coming through the floor as well. And that worked really well. And I wanted to add those lights onto the car to make it look like it might be landing there. It was subtle, but it was really fun, and it gave it that kind of UFO feel. Now, I added the clouds there, even though there were already some, and that was just to stop that character from falling away from the composition, just to bring him back in and make him feel as if he was a part of it. But also because I wanted him to have some detail on top of him. The good thing here is I wanted some neon lights travelling up the buildings. I wanted some more lights on top of the buildings. I even tried to bring a little of that colour into the typeface, because the typeface was just jet black. And my wife saw the cover and she loved it, but then she said, "Oh, the typeface is a bit bland. Why don't you do something with the typeface?" And normally when she sees something that I'm working on, she has an opinion, and a lot of the time she's right. So I tried working with the typeface a little more. I was happy with it just black, but no, she had a valid argument, so I trusted her. Never again. So I added these lights in, and it really helped just again bring that lifespan up from the bottom. But I also tried with the layer effects, just going in and seeing if I could bring some other colours through it, and didn't work. No, sucked. And this is me just trying to add some different colours in on those buildings on the side as well. And that didn't work either. At this stage I was thinking, it must have been late at night. It must have been late at night and I was just trying different things. And I probably packed up for the day and went downstairs and watched a movie. Now, everything is bleeding into everything over this side, and it's probably how it should be. But I'm just going to go in and just redraw some elements and resharpen things and just add a bit of this and that. Why? Because I like to torture myself, and because I know things could be a little better. So, and there's nothing wrong with doing that. You know, I think that's the mistake that a lot of people make, is that they just don't spend enough time on a piece. You know, I see a lot of people who do a painting and they say, "Whoa, that painting took such a long time." It's like, how long did you spend on it? 2 days. And you think 2 days is a long time? Really? Spend 2 years on a painting and then come back and tell me 2 days was a long time. You know, the old masters used to take years on a piece. How can you possibly tell me that 2 days is a long time on a piece? So yeah, this took a couple of weeks, and I'm happy with that. You know, is it finished? Yes, it's commissioned. It's finished. Could I carry it on? Yeah, of course I could. I could refine it. I could make it better, and I would love to. But it's a commission. I need to make money and move on. I am happy with this section now. I think it looks better. So it's time to move on. You can see me quickly just finishing up here and just tidying a couple of things. All I'm going to do is brighten these banners up quickly. They're looking quite good, maybe a bit too luminescent. I can tweak that slightly. The whole thing is really coming together well, and I'm really happy with it. All I want to do is just come down here and add some lights on. And at this stage I'm just blending, really. The overall thing is finished, and I'm really just bringing it together. You can see the detail is there now, and the title is tied in really nicely, and I'm happy with it, and it really works, and it helps tell a story. And the good thing is I've had a few conversations with the client, and yeah, I'm really happy with it. So it works, and it does what it needs to do, and the overall story arc is there. All I want to do now is add the series title on, and I'm just going to do that really quickly with a I'm going to do this with vectors though, rather than drawing this by hand. Now when I say really quickly, I had already sketched this out in pencil on my notebook, so it's not that quickly. And I'm obviously just going to sign it. Each of my signatures is done independently. I did once upon a time used to sketch them out and just drag it in from a different file, but these days I tend not to do that. This is the finished piece as it stands, and I'm really happy with that. That looks absolutely great. So yeah, I'm happy with it as it stands. I think it looks absolutely great. And I'll just bring up the two side by side again, so you can see them side by side. And there they go. I'm really happy with them. You can see the sketch there that the client approved and the finished piece. And you can see the difference. You can see how closely the cover sticks to the finished piece. The client, obviously, there's no giant surprise there. No one's gonna see this and think, wow, that's something amazingly different. However, everything that the client and I have spoken about has been taken into consideration, as well as all of the things that I've felt as an artist I wanted to do. And all the things the client has wanted me to do, I feel have been achieved. Now, in some cases, a client may come back and say, can you just tweak this bit? Can you just tweak that bit? Can you take this little thing out? I'm not keen on that. That happens, that's quite normal. In this case, there wasn't anything. which was absolutely great. It means I've done a good job. But, you know, it's quite normal if somebody comes back and says, can you change something? The client did come back and say, you know, can I have the title font on its own? And that's fine. I supplied all the fonts on separate layers on their own. And I provided them the right way up flat. And that was merely for spines and things like that, which I normally do anyway. I also provided, before he even asked for them, I provided the cover with fonts, without fonts, and I did a version without the series title as well. But as you can see, the major differences with these are the main building is a lot bigger in the sketch. It's a lot more imposing in the sketch. But the one thing you didn't get to see in the video was the fact that I actually added more image all the way around the edge. So it's as if the camera's been pulled out slightly, as if we've zoomed out a little bit. So there's a little bit more going on all around the edge of the image. So that's why it looks like there's that's why it looks like the image, the main building, is a little bit bigger in the sketch. It looks like all the buildings are a bit bigger in the sketch. It's merely because I've zoomed out. I shrunk the whole image down and added a little bit more of everything around the edge. But the major difference is that we've shrunk the hover car in the sky down and moved that down so we can get the title in that gap between the buildings. The reason I like the title there rather than just across the top as you'd normally have it on a book cover is because the title divides the two buildings, like the division between the family. If the rich people live in the top of the tower and the poor people live down on the ground, then the title is the division between the two. So that's why I wanted to put the title there, as the division between the two. And I thought that worked really nicely. And obviously Stuart's name fits really well there between the other buildings. And the scale as well works really well just there as well. Also, the other major difference is the car being changed, the scale of the car, and replacing that with a person rather than the car as the focal point in the bottom right hand corner. And I was happy with that. Now normally when I sign a piece my signature stands out a little bit more, but I didn't want to make my name stand out too much on this piece, as we have a lot of neon lights going on, and I think that might have been a little distracting on his jacket. So, yeah, ultimately, I let that slide. Now, my name is on a couple of the signs anyway, so I could live with it. You know, plus, if people want to know who did the piece, they'll find out who did the piece. Overall, there are a lot of shapes going on. I have a swirl of clouds around the top of the tower that I quite like. I have a lot of shapes being made out of the cars that I quite like. I have some shapes in the bottom right hand corner in the composition made out of smoke that draw your eye back into the picture, and on the bottom left hand corner the architecture. So I've got a very round shape to the bottom of the picture. There's a lot of shapes compositionally in this image that are very intriguing to the eye. And I think architecturally it works. All the time while I was working on this in Photoshop, I was looking at the thumbnail and making sure that this worked as a very interesting piece, and making sure that the thumbnail worked as a book cover, and that is a very important thing as well. So there you go. That was a long video, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that you found that interesting and relevant. Please let me know in the comments feedback below exactly what you thought of that and what you think of the cover. And I look forward to chatting to you again in the next video. Okay, I shall see you very, very soon. Well, thanks for watching. Be sure to comment, like, and even subscribe to my channel, Lawrence Can Draw. And if you really did like what you saw here, you can see more of it on my website, lawrencecan.co.uk. I'll see you next time.